celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Jeni Hott, I'm so excited for you to be here. I can't even express how grateful I am to have you on the show. Or I guess maybe I should call you Brilliant Jeni, which is that not your handle on X, the former Twitter?
That was my blogging name. It was actually a college nickname, but yeah, Brilliant Jeni.
Oh, that was your blogging name?
It was. That's all I was known as. Yeah, because back then nobody used their full name, so it was always you had a blogging name.
Okay. So just to give the audience some perspective here, you were the first female blogger to reach a 7-figure plus income, and you're like a serial internet entrepreneur. I've known you for, I think it's coming up 14 years or maybe coming up 15 years. I see you as like this, incredible woman who's got tremendous vision and this crazy compassion for others. But I remember when we were traveling with Tony Robbins, and you would move from city to city to city, and at every single city that you would move to, you would buy new clothes, and then when you left, you would give them away to the less fortunate. And then again, every city. But I think that was part of your blog, right? Because you were a travel blogger, which we'll get into. But I also remember like distinctly, like it was yesterday. And I have this vision consistently over years of us having dinner. I don't even know what country or what city it was in, but we were having dinner outside, and you were trying to explain to me what you did at the time. And, this goes back to like, I think it was 2009. And I just didn't understand, like, I'm an operator. I operate businesses. I'm not a social media guy. This was a huge stretch to do this podcast. And I didn't have any social media before we did the podcast. So it gives you some perspective of, my level of intelligence about some of the things that we're going to talk about here today. But you were trying to explain to me how you were making money, and I just couldn't I couldn't grasp it. But you have and are a legend in, I refer to it as social media, but really the blogging. When I first got to know you, you really set the standard. So I just want to give that perspective to the audience. I want to thank you. Like, I'm so grateful that you're here. Because this is not an area of like my center of influence. So I'm actually interested in picking your brain, but I know that you go so far beyond, blogging and internet serial entrepreneur. And so I just, I can't wait to get caught up and hear about everything that's going on. And so I'm curious what's happening in your life and how are things going?
I can't believe you remember all that. I was like, so many people, I forget that I would live like that, donate, clothes, and I wonder where that was that we were having dinner for the first time.
Yeah, that's a question I'd have to ask my wife, because I don't have a very good memory, and I don't often remember things, but you're one of those people that, at the time, it was so unique what you were doing. People, if you're listening to this podcast about, oh, she was a blogger, it's like, in 2023, that's like, oh, okay, whatever. But in 2008, 2009, that was not what people were doing.
Yeah, especially somebody that could travel and do that. It was a very different era, right? Back when people were blogging meant making $1 a day, and here I was making 7 figures. Yeah. And I didn't appreciate it either. I didn't realize what a huge thing that was until Google told me. Until Google came knocking and said, "Hey, we've never seen numbers like this with our ads, and we're going to give you your own team, your own deal." And that's one of those moments that it hit me where it was like, wow, this is not typical,
So, sorry, can you go back and kind of like reframe from the beginning so that like, there's some of this stuff I don't know, and I'm really I'm interested to hear it, but I'm sure the audience is kind of interested in hearing, how you've frontiered this whole, industry.
You want to hear the story?
You don't have to give me the whole, I think in the US, you guys use Cliff Notes. We use Coles Notes in Canada, but you give me the Cliff Notes version of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started out, believe it or not, a Tony event shifted my life here, thinking that, you grow up thinking you've got to follow that one path, right? Go to college and, get a career and start at the ground level and keep going up. And something just kind of always felt off. And it wasn't until I went to a Tony event, and I'd always been struggling with that, but I went to a Tony event. And when I came out of there, I realized, you know what, maybe I'm right and they're wrong. And that, I know it seems like way back then, but that kind of has shifted, and it's been kind of a principle that's ruled everything as I've gone. And it's what ended up triggering that path is when, I ended up moving to Puerto Vallarta for a while, and I was doing freelance. And that full first year, I made $1,300. And I don't mean $1,300 a month. I mean $1,300 for the year. I was chasing down paychecks to get paid from these little shops, and it was horrible. And I left corporate to do this and thinking that would get that freedom for me. And it ended up being such a struggle that I ended up having this really amazing moment. I actually had this client that was, we'll call her challenging. And I was leaving her shop one day. I was heading back to my place. I was in this old street, on this old street called Oldest Alta Street in Puerto Vallarta. And it's this old cobblestone street. It's very famous. I'm walking across the street and there's cars going by and everything, but I just stopped in the street. It was not even to the other side. I stopped. And I still remember like looking down at my sandals on those cobblestones and just saying like, this is crazy. Something's not right here. This woman had just gone off screaming at a customer in front of me. And I still didn't get paid. And I just felt like something shifted in that moment. And I had this moment where I thought, this isn't why I moved here. This isn't why I made that decision. And when I realized, okay, these are all the things I don't want, right? I don't want to work for somebody else like this. I don't want to have to chase down my paychecks. I don't want to have to, wonder if I'm going to get paid or do something for somebody else or be up at her, on her schedule. And when I realized that, I thought, okay, that's great. I know exactly what I don't want, but what is it that I do want? And let me tell you, it was like this just incredible, pivotal moment where a floodgate opened and all of a sudden I knew everything that I wanted, where I was like, okay, I want to be able to work for myself. I want to be able to sleep till noon if I want to. I want to be able to travel the world. I want to be able to make endless amounts of money. I want to be able to pay off my mom's mortgage if I want to. And it's just huge list. I'm standing in the street just thinking of all these things that I really wanted, and emotions that were tied to it were so intense. I didn't notice that there were still cars going by and people honking at me and, just people staring because I'm in the street blocking the street. And I just was like, oh my God, like it was just incredible. Finally come around too, and I realized, okay, I'm standing in the street and blocking people. So I shift on and I go home. I know. I go home and I'm thinking like, okay, am I losing my mind? No, I don't think so. I'm going to figure something out. There's something just happened. And I was in this like glowing moment. And I thought, okay, what can I do that will give me all of these things that I want? And I thought, you know what? It's going to be something on the internet because that would let me do this, 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 and this. And I started doing the checklist of all the things I wanted. And what I know now is because this is what I teach, right? I teach lifestyle entrepreneurship. But what I was doing was designing my life and then choosing the business to go with that, to work with what I wanted rather than the other way around, which is most people do, right?
Yep.
So I thought, okay, it's going to be on the internet because that will let me travel. That will let me make endless amounts of money if I choose to. I'm not limited by somebody else's amount to pay me or their schedule or anything like that. So I started looking on the internet and seeing how other people were making money. And I came across somebody who actually was how I ended up getting to know Tony, was because it was one of his speakers later, but Joel Comm, and he was making $50 a day. And I thought, you know what, if he can make $50 a day, I can make $50 a day. And I still didn't know how I was going to do it, but I started looking and there was this new thing that somebody was just talking about on in a article. And they're talking about this new thing called blogging. Now, mind you, this is back in like 2005. So you don't really know what blogging is. It's not what it is today for sure, right? There's nobody to learn from. There's no real explanation of blogging. WordPress was so primitive. I don't even know if it actually existed then. I think it did, but I think it was so primitive it wasn't used yet. But I started exploring that, and I thought, well, this will just let me have a platform where I can start trying something. I think it was like a free blog that I started the first time. And I had done some things with the internet in the past, just to pay for school. I thought it was going to be what I did to pay through med school. So when I thought back about what I'd done, I had done these communities, and I thought about people and thought about what I want, like what they wanted. And now I understand it's the same principles that I've used to this day, but I started thinking about what they wanted, and I started tying that in with these blog posts, right? And little by little, I started creating these information sites, and I started putting ads on them, and I would just make, a couple dollars a day. I set my first goal to make $33 a day, because then I knew, and to this day, it's my lucky number. You'll see it on my website. You'll see it, like I mentioned, it's all over the place, but $33 a day was what I needed to be financially comfortable, living in Puerto Vallarta at the time. My rent was covered, my food was covered, I was comfortable, I was okay. I wasn't scared, right? So my first goal was to make $33 a day. It took me a few months to get there. The next month I said, okay, I'm going to make $66 a day. Got there in another month. The next day it was $99 a day. And I just kept going, but I was working 18 to 24 hours a day. And I would stop to take a shower. I might sleep a little bit. And if somebody didn't put food in front of me, which back then I had an amazing boyfriend who would put food in front of me, otherwise I was not eating. And he would, let's go for a walk. Let's go do dinner. No, I would not leave my computer. So I'm going to figure this out. And then we'll talk about eating. So it took me about 6 months to where I was making a couple $1,000s. I'm working those hours steadily. And by the time that 6 months came around, I was doing great. And I could see that I could make, as much as I wanted if I just continued doing this. But what happened was I lost the use of my hands. And I don't mean like my hands started hurting or I'm getting a little bit of carpal tunnel. I mean, I physically couldn't move them. I was wrapping them in ace bandages. They're bruised, black, blue, purple from this point down. I still get it. You can actually see because I've been working. But it bruised all the way down here. And I couldn't...
From being on the keyboard for so long?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
For working those 18 to 24 hours a day, pushing myself. And I had one of those big containers of Advil on the side of my desk, on my computer. And I was living on those and just wrapping them in ace bandages and just kept going. But by that end of that 6 months, I could no longer open my laptop. I couldn't, my hands physically wouldn't move. Like I would try to move it and it just would stay. So that's when I kind of did a redesign where I was like, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted. I said I wanted all these things. I'm going to achieve that, but do I really, is this sustainable? And even now, like I need time to let my hands heal. So what am I going to do? Well, I didn't realize at the time, but I had created an ongoing issue that I still struggle with today. And that's osteoarthritis and tendinopathy. And you think about it, like at 30, I'm in my early 30s and struggling with that. Yeah. I didn't realize at the time that it was going to be something ongoing, but I realized, okay, I need some time here to let my hands heal. And I made a decision. I told myself, okay, from now on, I'm not going to work myself like this anymore. And so then I asked a better question, right? I asked myself, okay, how often do I want to work? And that's something I teach my students now is you really can ask yourself that, and then you can make it work for any amount of time, even if you don't want to work at all, it's fine. But I asked myself that, and I thought, okay, how often do I want to work? And I thought, you know what, I'm probably going to need about 3 months for my hands to heal, and I would like to go on a trip, and I want to be there for like 3 months. So I told myself, okay, from now on, I won't implement any marketing strategy, anything that makes me have to work more than once every 3 months. So everything, to this day, I still keep those principles.
Once every three, meaning like a day every 3 months or 2 hours or a week, or what was the definition on
all
that?
I knew was that I wanted to take 3 months off. And then I would come back and say, okay, what do I need to accomplish in this period? And I would set a time for that. And that's what I do today is I'll say, okay, I'm going to take the next month off or the next 3 months off. And then I'll have it in my mind what needs to be accomplished in that time. And I'll say, okay, I can do that in about a week. And so usually it's a week or two that I'll work and then I'll take off again. But at that time, like I said, I didn't really realize that I was going to need to do that consistently. But it was nice that lesson, right, was not to push myself that hard and to really start thinking about what it is that I want in more detail. And what happened, the blessing that came with that was that I did figure out a way to make it work so that I only had to work once every 3 months. That I could take off the next 3 months and let my hands heal. I figured out ways to make it, to keep it automated. And then I told myself, once I hit 6 figures, I want to take off and travel the world for a year. So I needed to figure out ways to make it automated so that I could work, so I wouldn't have to touch anything for another year. And I figured that out as well. When I was traveling, when we met, that's what I was doing. Was I had figured out ways to automate to a few months. So if you noticed at the time, like I would travel with everybody and have a blast, and then I would lock myself in a hotel room for 2 weeks, tell everybody, hey, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And we'll be in Egypt or whatever. But for that 2 weeks, I would lock myself in a Westin and I would just work out my plan. And I have a system for doing it, but it became very efficient. And I realized that's not sustainable, but it was what works for me. Rather than getting the burnout and doing the longer term things, it also works for me for the concentration factors where I can really drill down and be focused and not have those onsetting distractions. But it became my life where, okay, this year has been amazing. I don't think I want to stop. And so that 1 year that I told myself I was going to travel for that year, that turned into almost 5 years. So it was 5 years. Yeah. 5 years of.
I'm gonna hit the pause button for a second, and we'll just pause before this 5 years because I'm curious. Just a couple of questions through some of what we just talked about, which was the first question that popped in my head was, what you went to Puerto Vallarta? Were you running from a corporate job and then just kind of so tired of that you're going to go to Puerto Vallarta, or was it personal reason? Like, I'm just curious if you was like, what was the push to go do the freelancing and make $1,300 a year?
It was honestly, so I'm working at this huge conglomerate in Princeton, New Jersey, and I was taking breaks and working. I started working in the city in New York and doing the commute thing and working at law firms there. And I had a boyfriend who wasn't very nice, and I went to a Tony event. I remember actually, oh my goodness, I remember one day getting into my car, and as I was putting the key in, because back then we had keys, I was putting the key in, and
we're so old.
Right?
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm too young to remember that, but anyway. So I'm putting the key in and I thought, oh my God, like I hate my life. I remember having those words, like I hate my life. It's just, I was so miserable. I was incredibly unhealthy. I was in a horrible relationship with just not a nice guy. And my work was just overwhelmingly unsatisfying, right? I was rather not happy with anything. So I remember that day I got this letter from my dad, a handwritten letter, and it was apologizing to me for some things that had happened when I was a kid. He just was a disciplinarian. It wasn't anything horrid, but he,
Right.
for my dad to do that, this once a Marine, always a Marine, he sent me this letter, and in it was a ticket to Tony Robbins, to UPW.
Oh, cool.
And I remember having that thought of, oh my God, I hate my life. And then I thought, well, my dad just sent me this. Maybe that'll help. When I went to that event, it was like the second day that I realized, like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not crazy and this isn't what I have to do. I've always felt like something wasn't right. This isn't my path. And I, within 2 weeks, I decided, okay, I'm done. I quit my job in that 2 weeks. All of them. I quit my boyfriend. I packed everything up, I didn't pack everything up. I actually donated almost everything that I owned, gave things to my friends, gave things to charity, just got rid of everything. And I moved to Puerto Vallarta because it was the last place I'd gone on vacation with my grandmother. And I thought I was really happy there. And that was the last place I'd been happy. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go there for a while and see what happens and see, what comes about my life. So I moved to Puerto Vallarta. It was like 2 weeks and I shifted everything, dropped everything and moved. And that's when I had that experience, was like, within that year.
Right. So congratulations for making that jump. That couldn't have been easy. But interesting though, you said like, I went to Puerto Vallarta because it was the last place I was happy. And then you got there and then you weren't happy.
I know.
Right? And it's a good lesson for everybody. It's like, well, we often try to chase happiness, but there's obviously a message in there. In itself, but and then you get, and have this epiphany on the street of Puerto Vallarta. And I think you mentioned that you were thinking like, you reverse engineered basically what you wanted to do. It's like, what do I want out of my life? And then what do I do? Which no, like you don't hear that from, you wouldn't hear that from 1% of the population, really. Like
It's
that
not
is
allowed, right? It's not
it's not a
allowed.
common strategy and not a common tactic. It's not how we're raised, you know, get a job, pay your mortgage, buy a house, have some kids, whatever, da, da, da. So where did, because I mean, knowing like, and I'm kind of looking at like what you do now with laptop lifestyle, which we'll get into later, but I'm sure, but you know, that sounds like that's kind of was the epiphany of that took you on the next journey of your life. That, so where did that thought come from?
I think I had kind of always grown up with that. So my family is, well, they're all entrepreneurs. Like I never thought of it as a strange thing, but we had an aunt marry into the family and she had a traditional job, a career. And I remember her asking me when I was like 20, she said, don't you think it's odd that all of you work for yourselves? And the fact that that's when I was in college too, and I was doing my little side hustle for on the internet. Um, I think that's it. I think that I had family members, especially one uncle that was extremely successful, and he'd always work for himself, and he did that. So I think he was a good role model. So it kind of tied in with what I figured out on my own and with going to the Tony event. But I would see him travel and take off for months. I would see him, you know, he collected antique fire trucks and had helicopters and llamas roaming around his pool, and he didn't work all the time. And I think that was such an inspiration for me. And oh, now that I think of it too, it's my great grandmother had a saying that's now become my tagline for my business, a variation of it. But she used to say, "If work cuts into play, it's time to cut out on work."
Hmm.
And my uncle, I remember him saying that to me, and he was a very stoic, you know, not a, he didn't really joke a lot. He was very serious all the time. But if he spoke, you know, everybody listened because he had something to say. But for him to say it too, which I think it just kind of resonated with me from a very young age. And it's something that I kind of adapted to. And it's just become my motto over time. Like, I don't believe in working hard or skipping things in your life for work, for doing things that you're obligated to do or even creating obligations. But that's why, you know, now my tagline is work less, live more, make a difference. And that came from that saying. It's just kind of evolved into what my decisions are. It's my instincts, but you know, drilled down into that.
Do you think, do you think that some of, you know, the distinctions that you had there, you know, leading into this 3 month off, you know, because the hands like, so, you know, there's times where just hearing you, it's like, you know, this is what I believe and this is what I get stuck into doing, which, you know, the working for the 6 months straight. I mean, I've never heard anybody who is, I mean, I did have one friend who, in the restaurant business, he was on his feet so much. He worked so hard at the very beginning of opening his restaurants. He started bleeding through the end of his toes. And so, you know, so I mean, but I've never met anybody who's sitting there, you know, on a computer and they have no use of their hands, um, you know, for a 3 month period. That's, I mean, you were working hard.
I was determined.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And was it determined? What was the determination, to make money, or was it to find a solution? Cause I mean, like, I think of, you know, what my perception was when we met, which was 4 or 5 years after this. I think you said this was 2005. I mean, it, there's not a lot of people doing this. I mean, you were literally a pioneer in the internet space, um, at this time in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. There was, like I said, there was nobody to learn from back then. So it was all trial and error. There were not that many people that, you know, making money. There was nobody making money blogging. There were, within a few years, there were some making some money. And I know what was it? By 2008, I don't think but by 2008, I had hit seven figures. It took me 2 years to hit six figures. And it was a little over another year when I hit seven figures. Um, but like I said, there was nobody to really learn from back then. So I just kind of went with my instincts on what people wanted. And I really did know people. I've always been a huge social butterfly. My instincts were never about money, not ever. My instincts were about finding security, what I thought was security back then, but also freedom. Um, I wanted the freedom, when I break it down and you think about that list that I had, standing on the cobblestones, everything was about freedom. It wasn't about money. And I always joke that I always say I'm not a money driven person, but thankfully that makes me a lot of money. But, um, but I think I just knew from then too. I was always that wild spirit. I just wanted to have that freedom to do whatever I wanted to, and that, requires money. It does.
Do you have a definition? Like, did you at the time have a definition of what freedom was to you? I mean,
Yeah,
freedom.
It was that list that I said I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to be secure. I wanted all my bills. I wanted to never worry about anything. I wanted to be able to pay off my mom's mortgage if I wanted to. I wanted the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do, wherever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, with whoever I wanted to. I wanted that freedom.
You certainly got that.
I did.
I mean, and then the 5 years. So you go away for 3 months. You start to figure out these systems. And were these systems, was this something that was just an advancement in technology, or did you see a disruption somewhere? What was the process that allowed you to automate and nobody else was automating at the time? I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong. If you want to correct me, please.
No, there was nobody doing anything like this. So what I realized I needed was content, but I was not able to come up with that content. And this is, back then there was no Twitter yet. There was no social media. But I had forums. Remember, I was big on communities, and I realized that forums are content with people making it for you. So I started focusing on everything I do is capture, engage, convert. So I would capture them. I wouldn't advertise products or put affiliate links all over my site, or, what I would do was capture them. I would promote my forums like crazy. Free coaching in here, free support, get the network, the support you need. Everything was about grabbing them into my forums, getting them hooked on, once they're in there, getting them hooked on the engagement, getting them hooked on having their 6 human needs, right? Getting their needs met when they're in there. Everything that I looked at was, how can I meet their needs and how can I capture them so that I have years to sell to them, right? To market to them. And what I also figured out was, since I needed the content on my blog, the forums were doing great. And by the way, this is not something I recommend these days. The time shifts and audiences are different and niches are different. So forums are a lot of work. There's smarter ways to do it now. There's smarter technology, smarter opportunities. But at the time, what I figured out was that I could create a feed from those forums with the content that they were writing, and then feed that into my blogs so that it would create a post every time they would have a thread started. And then I would post questions, or actually what I did was post like an ad that had a question, prompting them to talk about a specific topic. It was what I needed for my blog. So if I knew that people were searching for XYZ, I would say, okay, this is the one I know that I need a post on. I can't type it, right? So I would prompt them to have a discussion on it. I would pull that discussion and put it into a blog post, and then ta-da, Google would love it, and it would send me more people. Then I would capture more people, put them back into the forums, and just rinse and repeat. And then in the forums, I had my ads and, some product links and things like that. So
sorry.
Yeah.
So were you on Google then trying to, you were finding out what people were looking for based on most searched words, or I'm an idiot on this stuff. So you gotta.
You're new to this stuff?
Well, okay. I prefer the word idiot. It's really the truth.
No, so I used, I went by the ads, right? I was making most of my money from AdSense, from Google AdSense. And so I used their keyword system. And then as, more advanced tools came available, I would use that. But yeah, I watched what they were searching for. Not only that, but I would pay more attention to what my people were asking for, because I knew that whatever they were asking for repeatedly was what was going to be coming up in the keywords soon enough, right? So I watched for those trends.
Meaning the people that were on your blog, that were coming to visit your blog. That
were in the forums, yeah.
Oh, they were in
so
the forums, okay.
I knew, I knew I could identify trends I very quickly realized I can get ahead of a trend if I watch what they're talking about in my forums, right? I have samples there of people, of communities in this topic. If they're talking about XYZ, you know, and it's come up in like 3 posts, you know what? This is probably going to start climbing in the search engine rankings. So I need to have something on that. So I would prompt them on a question for it, start a discussion, and then have that fed automatically into my blog with the feed. And then sure as heck, the Google would start, that would start getting more searches, and Google would start ranking me for #1 for that. So since I was the first one talking about it, there was no, you know, there was no articles on it with the news or anything like that yet.
So I just realized the reason why at the very beginning of the podcast, I said, like, I have this vivid memory of you and I sitting down having dinner and you explaining what you do. It's actually not a memory. I just realized it's been a nightmare because I didn't understand it then and I don't understand it now. No. Oh, God. I mean, it's so smart. Like, it really is. And I mean, I'm not surprised by that because you're brilliant. And, but like, where did this all come from? Where was there, you know, other areas that you had seen this work in other industries, or were you just kind of picked it up? And because if nobody was doing it.
No, it was all just trial and error. It was an opportunity and just following threads. If I saw something that would work, or if I had an idea on something that would work, I would test it, make sure it was going to work before I threw everything at it, and just go for it. But it was, yeah.
And at this stage, like, how big, how much, what are you earning on? I guess this is Google is paying you, is it, or is the blogs, or like, how are you getting paid? And then at what level were you? What year was this roughly that you were kind of perfecting this?
You know, it's all such a blur now, but I believe it was 2008 when I became the first 7-figure blogger. And like I said, I didn't really realize the impact on that until I had Google. You know, they were saying, like, we've never seen anyone making this much money. We're going to, you know, give you your own team, give you your own deal. You have no rules when it comes to the ads. And they had to explain to me even how it worked. They invited me to Google in San Diego, to their headquarters in San Diego, or to that location there. And it was, it was very eye-opening even for me to realize I had achieved that level, but I don't really.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you're like, they brought you to Google to explain to them what you were doing. So, like, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't like you walked in the office and Sergey's sitting there and you're like, hey, man, but to be brought in there, for them to pick your brain, I mean, at some point you must have been like, oh, man, I'm on to something here. Like, well, you obviously knew you were on to something before that, but.
I didn't realize that. So what they said was that I had shifted the blogosphere, like I'd shifted the internet, because I was, you know, now it was possible to make real money with blogging, that they were going to see this flood, and they started to see this flood on blogging. So they said I shifted the landscape of the blogosphere. And it's funny, is I just never saw myself like that. It's just like the first time I ever saw myself as a leader is when Tony called me that on stage. And I was like, oh, I guess I am. And by then I'm getting millions of hits a month and still hadn't seen myself in that light, right? But for me to actually have Tony say that about me on stage, and I went, ooh. And then I remember having this thought right after that. I thought, it's a good thing I'm a really good person. I have a really big heart, because all of my intentions have been good. My ethics have been good, because I could have done some damage. Like, my purpose was to help people. And thankfully, before I realized, you know, and now with my students, I teach them, from the minute you hit that publish button, you're a leader. You are putting information out there that's going to influence, right? So it's a responsibility. It is. You realize if you come in, if I can introduce them to that idea early on, you know, I can make sure that they're on the right path for the big picture.
I mean, you make a really good point, because there are people out there now that are, you know, not playing with the best intentions for others, and, you know, are looking to influence their own agenda or someone else's agenda. how has the industry changed from kind of, Tony pulls you up on stage. I think my memory serves me correct. That's like 09, 2010, somewhere in there. If that, and
Oh, how
then,
it's changed.
yeah, like how's the industry changed and, going from blogging and then obviously, YouTube but where have you seen the transition in the industry? And then to now we have, all these social media influencers, which really is an advent, or I'm assuming is an advent of what you and, maybe a few other people started in the blogging world.
It's interesting is I see this just as another leg, right? We had the internet come up, then we had more like communities and socialization there. We have the information just overload, right? And then we had the social media explosion, and then now we've got AI. I watched the evolution of it, and now I see like when the blogosphere took off. That's the first time in history when every person that has the internet had the opportunity to have a voice, right? Think about that. That no time in history has anybody ever had that. Like it's just so easy, right at their fingertips. You think we had those, early publishers, and like you think of early publications and using the invention of the printing press, and
Right.
we're yeah. So I feel like when I'm watching it now and having started as early as I did, my first internet business was 1998. So when I look back at it and I see the whole shift of everything, I see it as it's interesting. Is I see it as one thing. It's technology just never stops, right? It's the one thing you can count on constantly pushing forward. Technology can't be stopped. Um, so I see it as more an intertwining of humans and AI. I think that's where, as I hate to go down that rabbit hole, but that's where I see
No,
the evolution of it now is we've it's already happened, right? We're already becoming this tied unit with AI. I mean, not with AI, but with technology. That's how that happened even with social media. And people, I know there's a lot of people that are so worried about AI now, and I think it's no different than getting scared of something new being invented a couple hundred years ago, thousands of years ago. But the sooner we can embrace it, the sooner we can move forward and take advantage of it. But I see it as that's already happened. It's already started to happen. We're already combining everything, our pop culture, the way we think. Everything is tied in with social media, with the information you find on the internet. Everything is tied together. So this is just another leg of that happening. But I realize now, like AI has been around for a long time. People don't realize it. It's been here. I was starting to take advantage of article spinning things so that I could refresh my own content on my blogs. That stuff has already been around, and this is just another leg of it. It's just another expansion of it.
how long have you been
I'm
using that?
excited.
How long have you been
Oh,
using AI for?
that was quite a while ago. I want to say that was almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. When it was already being, and I've kept an eye on it because for me, being obsessed with automation, I've kept an eye on it. And I go, oh, okay, well, I wonder what this is going to become. And so I remember hearing about the ChatGPT stuff coming up. I'm a total tech geek myself, but I remember hearing about it and going like, oh my gosh, cannot happen soon enough, especially for my hands, right? I am all about like, let's do this faster. And I'm like, yay, I have something to keep up with my mad scientist brain. So I'm in heaven.
And while we're on the topic of AI, but do you have any concerns about AI, especially being a mom? How old's your son? Your son is,
He is about to
is
turn 9.
okay. I was going to say 10, but okay. Do you have concerns about AI, social media, how it influences kids, where this has gone, where it might go?
I get asked about this a lot, and my thing is, like I said, you can't stop technology. I just had this conversation. Justin Mendenhall is visiting me right now. We were just having this talk this morning. Um, he was asking me. London was listening to a song that was had some swear words in it, and I said it's okay because I said I can't stop him from hearing this. He's got access to AI. He's got ChatGPT in his room. He's got an Alexa in his room. We've got, and we've got a toaster that's a techie digital screen. Like you can't keep him from that. So I have to teach him to embrace it, to understand it, and to respect it, and to make smart decisions with it. Right. So same thing with this school. They sent out a survey and started talking to all the parents. Do we keep technology out of the school or do we not? And I'm like, if you keep it from them, they're going to be behind. So the faster that we can teach them to embrace it and to use it responsibly and ethically, the better. So that's my take on it personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I definitely, I mean, I still drive a 69 Ford Bronco, so
Right.
I shouldn't, no, I'm kidding. But you can't, I mean, you're right. You can't keep it out of the school. That's, I mean, I totally agree with that. I do get concerned with things like, um, falsifying identities, whether it's through the phone or, on video calls and, distress, like you could, distress calls to parents, sending money, leaving a message on the phone, whatever. I mean, there are, I mean, when I look at AI and, I get it, we have to go forward. It's not going away and I don't want it to go away. I'm in the camp of 80% of me is excited about what it's going to bring. I think it's going to democratize a lot of things for people. It's going to demonetize and give more access for healthcare. And I mean, it can only be better for the world and for the people who need it most. I just think that, the bad faith actors, it gives them more access to do worse and more bad faith things, if that makes
I
sense.
agree, and I 100% agree with you, and that's why I say like I hope that parents will start teaching them to use it responsibly and ethically. Because if we start with that now instead of trying to keep them from it, then you're not teaching them to use it, for good, right? And then you have the opportunity for them to grow up, and not the opportunity, but the consequences if they grow up and they don't know to use it responsibly and ethically. So that's with my son especially. I want him to make good decisions. I tell him all the time, make good decisions, make good decisions. Um, if we're teaching that from a young age, there's going to be a lot less of the negative in the future, right? Because they've all been raised to think that way, to think that this is, we've got to use it for good, right?
Yep.
If we leave it to themselves and we try to block them from it, we try to keep it from them or censor it, then it's up to their own, take on it, and they might not make the right decisions later. So yeah, I'm all about teaching them to use it, in a really positive and almost a philanthropic approach.
And are you an advocate for regulation on AI and some technologies? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm still coming up with my own opinions on that based on what I'm seeing. But the thing is, it's already censored. There's nothing you can do because it's invented by people, right? And we all have our filters, so we're censoring certain things nonstop without, being a neuroscience geek. We we censor things constantly. It's in our nature. So even with it being created, it's already having those unconscious biases are put into the AI itself. And it will evolve in its own self, just like we do as humans, but it will start to evolve on its own. I don't know that we will be able to censor it in the long run. That's a very realistic theory. Like it's not going to be within our control forever, to be honest. It's just true. It'll start to become its own entity, right?
Yeah, when on one of my other podcasts, we talked about a little bit about technology and what say for example in China, children see on TikTok and what's available to them. Obviously, it's a communist country and they have the ability to censor some of that stuff. But what someone in North America might see on TikTok is one could argue that what they see in China is healthy and it's about science, it's about learning, it's about education, and here it's who can shake their butt the best, and I mean there's and I don't know how we overcome some of these things. Time on technology, and there's a lot of value to being outdoors and experiencing nature, and I don't know, I don't even it's probably not a question. It's just, that's where that's where the 15 or 20% of me kind of gets nervous, with kids and schools and education and all this is if we're relying on our educators to, do the right things, sometimes that doesn't always happen either. Not that I'm negative on teachers and education, but they're people, and they have their own, like you said, they have their own biases as well. So, as we're programming AI with our biases, we're also programming our children. So I might have just answered my own question. I don't know.
I completely agree with you. I don't think I would say anything different. I don't know if I'm so big on teaching my son that too. Like I tell him, you need to be outside every day. You need to be in nature. We need that. And again, neuroscience geek, right? It's actually part of us, not just being healthy, but thriving. We actually need to be in nature at least 1 hour a day.
Is that what you try to do? At least
I do. And my son does the same. We always make time to go outside and be in nature.
Yeah. You live in California, so it's not hard. Pretty good place
That's
to be
right.
in nature.
I know. We're missing out on your snow.
So I'm curious, like before we got into the AI conversation, I didn't want to get off it because I wanted to get a couple of your thoughts in AI, but just to backtrack a little bit. So, you evolved what'd you call it? The blogosphere or what was the word? Yeah. Blogosphere. Never heard that term. So the blogosphere and that evolves, and now all of a sudden, you had mentioned like the evolution of social media, and I kind of like one of my things that I'm curious about is the monetization process of, and specifically around people being able to make their dreams come true, like you did. I think that is one of the things that is unbelievable, has always blown me away about you. I've always walked away. Like I remember the first time when we first met you, and my wife is a massive Jeni fan. Like she loves you. And I remember her talking, at one of the events and, you meet people and, I said to her, I'm like, what's Jeni do? Like, and she's like, well, she tried to explain it to me too. And I'm like, wait a second, she's making 7 figures, traveling around the world, and I'm busting my ass running 2 companies to make that kind of money. Like, this is unbelievable. So I've always seen you as like a dream maker. And not to over exaggerate that, and I don't want to be over complimentary, but I certainly would not be doing you justice to really phrase it in any other way, because it was like I was blown away when we first met, and just going like, she's literally traveling the world, kind of working 2 weeks out of every couple of months or whatever it was, with complete freedom, which I loved your word there. I don't know if I had that word back then, but I'll use it now, with complete freedom. And now, like, how do people, look at their current situation and then say, hey, how can I use, whether it's social media or, YouTube or whatever vehicle it is. And I'll let you describe those vehicles, but how do they do that to make their dreams come true, to grow their business, to reach out to the target customer, to really kind of, build the dreams that they want, the life that they want?
So, with the internet, there's so many opportunities. And forgive me, hopefully I understand what your question is here, but there's so much opportunities. I honestly tell people they should choose what makes them happy, right? I talk about your happy place all the time. Just to break it down, there's 4 models for online business. There's the e-commerce model and the agency model, which is like doing, selling things, and then doing one-on-one like coaching or graphic design, something that's service-based. Those 2, for me, I tell everybody, please stay away from them. Like if you don't want to work if you want freedom, those 2, unless it's a passion project, unless it's something you really enjoy and you want to do, that kind of work, that's fine. But you cannot fully automate those in any way, because you'll always have quality control and customer service. And, even if you have other people managing those things, you still have to manage them and manage how they're managing it. So it's just never two things that you can fully let go of, right?
So are you referring to like Amazon as e-commerce, let's say, being the Amazon reseller, and then the other would be like a Fiverr or Fiverr or whatever, however they pronounce that?
Yes, or a life coach, or
right.
yeah. But those two models, they're not for me. Like I said, for some people, they love it. They really love it, and that's great. Especially like they want their own product. That's amazing. I've done all of these, by the way. Like anytime I get bored, I'd start a new business and just play with it and see, it's great, build it up and then sell it. So I've done all of them. And I'll tell you, like, when it comes to freedom, I don't care. Oh, some of my peers are going to not be happy right now. I'm sorry, but I don't care if, like, you hear like you can drop ship and let, hands off. You're not going to be hands off. You still have to do quality control. Like
it's still an operating rough business. You're going to be tied to it. You're going to have employees. You're going to have payroll. There's a lot of administration.
And a lot of customer care.
Like a lot of customer care. So I think to your point right there, though, is what you did say to qualify so that nobody gets mad at you is if you want to have freedom, you're going to have challenges in these areas.
Right. And then there's also the side with the agency model where you're so limited financially because you can only take on so many clients. Even if you hire other people to take on cases or clients with you, you're still managing them as well, right? And we'll get into that later, or if we do, but even taking on a partner or every time you hire somebody, that you're actually adding to your plate. You're not taking away from it. That's how I view most of the time. But any of those two, I just for personally, if you want complete freedom in a business, like those two, I avoid. The next two, though, one is the influencer model, and then there's the information model, right? Influencer model, it's a YouTuber, a podcaster, you're an influencer. You're doing the influencer model. Sorry, but it's true. You make the cringe face.
I did.
It's a good thing. It's a great thing. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
I love it. And so that one's fantastic. The thing with that one, for most people, it takes a long time to build up, right? It takes a while to build up the following. And some people, like this one, it's going to be amazing very quickly. But for some people, that could take years. And so it's a great model. It's one for freedom. It's awesome, especially if you really enjoy being on camera. You really enjoy writing, blog posts. That's great. The last one, though, the information, which is mostly online education, right? That model is my preference. Right now, in this time, especially since COVID, everybody's turning to the internet for learning, and you've got these major institutions like Harvard putting their courses online. Their degrees. You can get a Harvard degree now online. That's just crazy to me. But it's become an acceptable thing where you can go online and learn these things. So people are actually actively looking to the internet to learn. So creating an information product, an online course, an online training program, one of those to me is magical because it lets you do all of the things that I talk about, which is you get complete freedom. You can do completely hands off if you want to. You can, you still, you work less, you can live more because you can spend all your time focusing on your actual life, spending time with family and everything else rather than constantly being on, with clients and trading time for dollars. But it also doesn't limit your income. And the best thing about it is that model, you can bring in money very quickly and you can build up traffic with it very quickly. So to me, like that's the future right now. And when it comes to anything automation, like that's what I focus on with teaching, is trying to get them to have that product on top of teaching all the principles and everything else. But that's the key for these days.
So when you're like, you just talked about those, the last two models, which was the influencer model and the education model. Is that correct? And then like the influencer model, and I will say, like, while we're on the topic of like, I have no clue on how to monetize this. I've never even thought about how to monetize this. I know a lot of people. I wanted to have really interesting conversations like this, where I'm like literally hunched over my mic, hanging on every word and learning and growing. And then not only from a business perspective, most of our conversations actually go way off the radar when it comes to business. But but we're sharing about, you know, growth and how, you know, it works and manifests, and how our lives, you know, manifest. The like on an influencer model, for those people who are trying to do that, I'm really not. I'm just trying to have cool conversations, and add value to people who are listening. I really don't have, I don't run ads. I'm not looking for anybody to run an ad on my podcast. Like that's not what this is about for me. But with even on the influencer and the education model, like how do people look at that and then say, well, how do we ramp that up? Because when I think of influencer, I actually didn't think of a podcast as like, obviously, I guess they're influence. I think I see them as information. But when I think of influencer, I think of somebody who's out taking a picture of their bathing suit or their car or their whatever they're doing, and they've got a big following because they do crazy cool stuff. Like, what's the guy on YouTube, Beast? Yeah, so like he to me is like, that's one of those. He to me that's like an influencer type of thing. Like he's drawing people in because he's doing cool and crazy stuff. What's the process like? When people look at this, like how do they look towards tracking to make this something that does allow them to have the freedom that they want, or the lifestyle, or the whatever it is that they're looking for?
Well, first is to get really clear on what you want. And then you can ask yourself what it is that you want to go there. When I talk to my students about like choosing their topics, what they want to focus on, it's usually me telling them to go talk to their family and friends first and say, hey, what would you say that I'm all about? What would you like to learn from me the most? It's very eye-opening because a lot of times we don't appreciate the things that others see very easily, right? Especially when we're such an expert in something, we take it for granted. How many times do I ask somebody that and they say, yeah, but nobody wants to learn that from me. Like everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. No, they don't. So that's usually the thing that you really want to focus on. And surprisingly, it's not usually what you think. And with mine, I thought people would want to learn blogging because this time, I realized that I had outgrown blogging. I just realized like it just wasn't making me happy anymore. And even the other businesses, it just wasn't making me happy. So I sold them all. And then I went to my following. I went to my friends. I basically went to my Facebook and said, hey, what would you guys want to learn from me the most? I'm going to start something new. I'm looking for that spark. I knew I wanted to teach because I realized that the only days I was really happy, like excited just with that, pure jump out of bed energy, was the days that I was helping somebody with their blog or with their business. Those days I would be up at 4 a.m. going, oh, I know you have to do that. Do you want me to do it for you? So I knew I was ready to teach. I just didn't know what I wanted to teach. And so I went to my friends, family, and to my Facebook and my following and said, hey, what would you guys want to learn from me the most? And I thought it was going to be blogging. I thought they'd say like, how do I start a blog? I thought they'd say like, how do I make money from a blog? And no, they said, how do you work so much? How do you make so much money and not work? And then when I started doing my one-on-one conversations, which is what I do for every business before I start it to validate, every single one of them, I've now done over 150 interviews. Every single one of them used the word freedom. Every single one used the word freedom. So I knew that's what I needed to focus on. And it's not so much about the business or creating the product. They want to know the principles. They want to know the skills, the strategy, the instinct. They need to know that to actually have the business based on, with those principles to have the freedom. So that's what I ended up going with for me. But I have other students that have come and they have those conversations and they realize, everybody said they wanted to know how I'm so happily married. And so they go and create a product that's based around being a great husband. There's other ones that come in and I have one, I can't believe how amazing he's doing. I'm so proud of him. He's lost over 100 pounds. Actually, no, I think he's lost over 200.
Wow.
He's lost a lot. He's still got some weight. And so he was worried. He was like, I can't teach weight loss. I still have a lot to lose. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, look at what you've accomplished. So we put him in front of people. We did all these validation. We processed these steps. And don't you know, like, he's got people begging to be on his program. He's got one lady that's like, just send me, where do I give you the money? Like, And he was on our call yesterday. He was so excited. But I love that. Like that's what he's all about really now is helping people to lose, over 100 pounds. But
And so I mean, maybe this is a good time, but you are now running a business called Laptop Lifestyle, right? And .co or something like, I think that's what it is. And so you teach people how to build information businesses or also influencer businesses or just the information?
I focus on teaching them how to work smarter, not harder. I teach lifestyle entrepreneurship, the instincts, the skills, the approaches you need. It's really a mindset. It's really about learning how to set boundaries, how to strategize your work schedule, how to identify, like one example is one thing that I cannot go without is I validate everything up front. To me, it's absolutely crazy to go and build a huge business and not validate every step before you build it. You can waste years. A lot of my students will come to me and they say, I've been struggling to make money online for 8 years or 10 years or longer. And one that put in so much time and money into a business and he didn't validate the topic first. If he had validated the topic, he wouldn't have been taking those 2 years where he wasn't making any sales at all. He was struggling to even get his name out there. He hadn't figured out, he's still worried about his brand. But those 2 years, like he could have saved so much time in that by just validating first that one, there was demand, two, making sure that the pricing that he had was in place, was what they were okay with or quick about. Just taking those basic steps to validate it before you even start. That's a huge one. And I have all these strategies for it, but it's like if you want to create a new program, right? And you think I hear this one a lot too. They'll say like, I already know, I've been doing this for this many years. I've been a successful coach. I already know what my program is going to be on. It's going to be this. They want to know this. And when I have them go and talk to them and actually do the validation process first, 99.9% of the time they're wrong. And they're so shocked because they're like, I've been doing this for so long and I never, I thought I knew them. But if you stop and listen, you find out all that information ahead of time. You can find out what your marketing message needs to be. You can find out what your marketing tactics need to be. You can find out where it's going to be best to market. You can find out all of this information ahead of time for your launch. So you can actually, come out of the gate and have a home run in the first month rather than spending years throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what's going to fit. Like you want to come out and spend, thousands of dollars on a website first, and then, a couple $100 on a logo, and then getting the name right, and then, coming out with this, I'm going to try this funnel and this marketing message and this webinar, and we'll see if that works. All this guesswork is what makes you struggle instead of having it all nailed down in the beginning. And it's crazy to me that we don't think to do this, but I had to learn that out of survival. I had to learn that I don't have the luxury of sitting at my computer and building out a 22-step funnel before I know all of these answers ahead of time, before I know it's going to work, because I don't have the luxury with my hands. I don't have the luxury of rinse and repeat and trying to, figure it out. I need to know upfront so that I can get it done the first time, get it done right.
And so how do you do this market evaluation before like what is the process? Do you have a specific product? And you may not want to share it. You might have to become a client of Jeni's, but
I'm happy to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm just curious, like how you do this validation beforehand, and that it's so succinctly, like, I mean, you are talking with absolute certainty. Like it's like 99.9% of the time they get it wrong and da, da, da. It's like, it's got me very curious what that process looks like.
Well, one thing is like taking a lead magnet, right? Let's say, do you know what a lead magnet is? If anybody doesn't know, a lead magnet is when you go to somebody's website and you've got, opt in and you'll get this little free gift or this PDF or this ebook. So you take that lead magnet, and instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to make this amazing lead magnet, right, and put it on my site and it's done. And then your conversion rates are cruddy or they're okay. But they could have been so much better if you just go and ask your potential clients. And I have all these processes for finding them and doing all of this that's very in-depth. But just as an example, let's say you go to a couple of your clients and you say, hey, which of these 5 lead magnets would you be most interested in? and they start to tell you. So, you know, before you go and create it, before you spend all that time creating, you know, this, I've seen some people create this 100-page ebook and nobody wants it. So if you go up front and you say, like, you know, I'm going to create this one, or this one, which one would you be most eager for? And now it's nice is with the AI, I can actually go to AI and give it the options or ask it for options. And I have very strategic formulas for nailing down what needs to really be in it. Even in the title, it has to be a formula. But I can go and ask it there and start the validation process with AI first and get it as close as possible. And then I could take that to potential clients and say, which of these would you be most eager to read? And really what I want is somebody that's like, I must have that, right? So which of these would you feel like strong? Yes, I want that. So you get that from them and you have like 20 people say, that's the one I want. Then you know to go build it, rather than I know what they want. I'm going to go put it up there and it doesn't perform very well. And
Right.
you've wasted that much time. So that's just one example.
Then you get into the process of whack-a-mole, trying to find, oh, let's try this one, let's try this one, let's try this one until something hits. But by the time that happens,
you've spent years
time,
trying
money,
to
energy.
figure it out. Yeah. And there's other things too, is like when you create those, you know, you should already be pre-selling in that, like because, you know, before you get somebody into your program, like you want to have them sold before they ever talk to you, before they're even in front of the cart. You want them already sold. You want them to already want it, right? You don't get them on a sales call or put them on the sales page immediately and propose before you dated. You want to know before you propose you've got a yes, right? So you can already start building that from the very beginning and start validating it before you ever even get close to that. So that you know that lead magnet could end up, you know, it's already got them thinking, I need this person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're starting to think that way from the very beginning, by the time they get to any option to purchase, any option to convert, you've already got a strong yes. It should not be, if you're having to sell them when they're on a sales call, you're doing it too late. You should have already got them to that point, you know, through other marketing things. And you can start that through validation.
So, and as the consumer starts to transition to more online, what's your experience and how many businesses are really taking advantage of this? And not even just on the influencer or information side of things, but even on the product side of things, you know, like I have friends in all kinds of businesses, but they sell franchises like restaurants, car dealers. I mean, you name it. I mean, how can you utilize this in mainstream traditional businesses where people are looking and going like, I've got to create, you know, some type of online, you know, mechanism here, or I have to optimize my online mechanism because they've been playing whack-a-mole for so long. What would you say to those people?
You mean like how would they monetize it?
Yeah,
Or
like
how would they?
what would be the steps, or like would they use a company like your, like, do you do that with companies who are selling products?
No, because that would be an agency model. So that's not my that's not my thing.
Right.
I strictly put them through training, right, through courses, and teach them, and then I do a very light coaching with a group setting. But I usually have them start out like that where they're um, identifying first what it is that they want in their life, so that they can figure out first if this is a good path for them. If they want to do an influencer model, believe it or not, is actually a lot of work. You can't automate it, but it takes a long time. But I have them identify first what they want in their life, get really clear with it. How often do you want to work is a big one. What kind of schedule do you want? Where do you want to work? Some people, a lot of people, they'll start a business and not really think about that. And then they realize, you know what, I really wanted to travel, but I've created a business that requires me to be here in this one spot. Like I can't leave America because this one needs me to be in America, or I can't, I have to be at an office for this, or I have to be, and we need to map that stuff out first so that we're not wasting time getting into a position where we're not in a happy, um, business, right? And it's something
Yeah.
that's really meeting our needs. So that's usually the first step, is really getting clear on what you want. Like for me, I don't want to work on a Saturday. I like working on, I like taking off weekdays, because then when I do work on a weekend, it's very quiet. A lot of people will leave me at peace and I can focus, right? But I also like, I know that I don't want to work on Saturdays because that's a day that I need to spend with my son. So people that can take time and actually get clear on those things, um, that makes it a lot easier to make those decisions when it comes to the choice of business, the model. When, if they do choose that they really want something that's complete freedom and they're going to go down that online education model, the info product model, then it's really as simple as starting out with deciding on your topic, getting really clear on your topic. But instead of, as much as I would like to say, follow your passion, that's not really the case.
Right.
It's beautiful, and hopefully that is the case. What I tell them to focus on is, one is choose something that you're an expert in, that you can provide the result. Your expertise is what's going to sell, right? People pay for transformation, not information. So you need to be an expert on that. It doesn't mean credentials, because like me, I actually have the education of a doctor. I have not practiced as an naturopathic doctor, as an ND. So, but I have 26 years of experience of doing this. So it's like, which one would you want to learn most from me? Like you say, your credentials don't matter, but your expertise, your
Right.
knowledge, your skills, that matters.
It's a great point.
So, right. So focusing on your expertise, and I usually have my students just fill out a list of, like I said, what they're about and what people are saying they would want to learn from them. Those things are key. You can choose from any of those, but here's the other kicker: is that it's not really the passion for the topic; it's the passion for being able to get them the results of working with people on that topic. Because if you feel passionate about that, that's your driver. That's going to keep you from ever getting burnt out. That's going to keep you from, it's going to keep you in satisfaction. It's going to keep you happy. So that's what telling them the next step is identifying their expertise and their passion for, if they have the passion for getting the result for people. The other reason that that's important too, I should mention that, is that because you can potentially automate this completely, you're not going to be teaching it all the time, but you will be seeing the results, and you will want to refresh your content and things like that. And that's always going to be driven by, can I make this better for my people, for my following, for my students, for my clients, right? So if you have that passion for wanting to help them and for wanting to see more testimonials coming from them and telling you that this changed their lives or something like that, that's the passion that's going to pull you back in to want to do more and to want to make it even better. So it's really not about the passion for the topic itself in you, but it's more about them. Right. So if you have those two things, that's the perfect place to start.
You kind of tweeted on something a little earlier, which, I think this, like listening to the process, it's interesting because I had a couple of things that were going through my head. Number one was, I'm so old school, right? Like, I mean, up until a few years ago, people go, well, when do you want to work? Monday to Sunday. How much time do you want off? None. It's what I did. Tennille and I are trying to take some downtime, especially this fall, and, we're trying to close our laptops at 7:00 at night and, maybe take Sundays off or whatever. And we're really, really trying hard, and it's a difficult process. When you're used to doing something a certain way for so long, it is hard to get yourself out of the routine and into a new routine. And so when you were talking about this, I found my head was starting to, swell up. Like, we're looking at moving to Florida for a significant amount of our time. And so the answer right away is, well, when we move to Florida, like, I'm going to go down, look for a business to buy, buy another company down there, and, rinse and repeat. And so, I'm listening to you going, whew, I feel like, I just sat with a bit of a psychiatrist to kind of work through some of my issues on really, identifying what is possible out there. But the other thing and you made a good point, and this was going to say was, you made a good point earlier, whereas like, it's hard, and maybe this is just a me issue, but I think other people feel the same way, that, it's hard to believe that you're an expert in something. I've been doing this 35 years in business. I've owned 30 plus companies it's probably more than 12 industries now. I know it's more than 12 industries. and I still don't think I have really anything to offer to anybody, right? Or that, are they really going to listen? Are they really going to do like the training? And, why am I going to create something for them to just kind of ignore it? Whatever that story looks like, but there is a bit of a hump here where I feel like people would have to feel like it's like, I got to overcome, some roadblocks in my own mind. So I guess one of my questions, I guess, is what did you have to overcome? Was there something that you had to overcome in order to kind of get yourself through this same process?
I just went through that with this business because it's still a sense of like, oh my goodness, how could I possibly teach them the instincts that I have for doing this? Because now I do it in a flash of a second, right? So it's like, how do you teach instinct? And I've never coached before. Like, so there's all these questions too. Is I'm sure I want to do that? Can I do that? So it's kind of a natural thing. It's actually, again, going to go into the ND neuroscience thing, but it's actually your brain's way of keeping you in your comfort zone. It's doing its job. So I always say, embrace imposter syndrome. It's be thankful that your brain's keeping you safe, and then you can kind of move on because you recognize it and you can move through it quickly. But I had to do the same thing. It's perfectly normal, and I'm sure it happens with you every time you buy a business, right? When you do a new business, like, is this an industry I want to get into? Can I do this industry? Like, this is something I haven't done before? But there's also that other side of us, right? That drives us, that entrepreneur spirit, where we're like, I'll take the risk. This is exciting. I'll just bite into it. That part drives me, right? The other thing though, is the biggest one is when you talk to people and you say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts on that? And what's your experience with it? Have you ever tried to go out of the country and buy a business? Or have you ever, what was your process or your thoughts when you tried to buy this business? Or have you ever thought of doing it? And they start to tell you and you start to listen and you realize, oh my gosh, you should do this, this, and that. And you realize I can help you. And all of a sudden things start shifting because you realize, of course I can help you. You didn't know that? Oh, here, this is how you do that part. Oh, I have that answer too. And you start to realize, you talk about getting rid of imposter syndrome fast, is when somebody is sitting in front of you and saying, I don't know XYZ, and you have the answer, boom, you are like, I got you. This is what you do. It shifts things. So that's usually my go-to for that one, including for myself. It's not just my students, but for myself is every time I've started a business, I do that. I talk to real people and I start to ask them about what they want, what they expect, what their experiences have been with that in the past before I jump into it, because I want to validate, make sure, right? Yeah. But that's the way I start to address all of that.
Was there ever a point where you just were not absolutely confident that you could do this stuff? Like even in the beginning?
What's funny is that when I started blogging, right in the very, very beginning, so I wasn't making much, but my friend from college, she called me and I told her I'm going to try this blogging thing. I'm going to get this going, right? I think she wanted to come visit and I told her no because I was busy working. And she said, no, she's like, people don't make money from that. You cannot make money from that. She's like, just come back to the city, come back and I'll get you a job where I'm at in New York, at the law firm I'm at. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to give this a try. Like there was something in me that was sure. And remember I said, I saw somebody making the $50 a day, right? And I just knew if they can do it, I can do it. But funny thing is 2 years later, she was working for me. Really? So yeah, she actually did like laugh at me, like verbally, like out and out laughed. And you can't do that. Like, that's crazy. It's like writing a diary online. You're not going to make money. But 2 years later, she was working for me. So I don't know that I ever really fully doubted. There have been businesses where I started, thinking like, okay, this might be above my pay grade kind of a thing, which I know sounds funny, but going into like creating a whole new product that nobody had created yet and trying an e-commerce route with that, where I was like, oh, this one might be a bit much, like, but it's that, like I said, it's that spirit inside that's like worth taking the risk, right? And the biggest one for me though has been this, because in blogging and in my other businesses, I've always been very careful to stay out of the spotlight, not use my name, and keep that the privacy, that anonymity. So accepting the fact that I'm going to be speaking more and going to be, more vocal on like doing YouTube and more interviews like that. That's a big one for me. That's been a very big one for me because I really do like to stay out of the spotlight. I don't like to be on stage much, or, I speak plenty, but it's not my happy place, right? So now I've realized the way that I got through that was realizing that I can help a lot more people if it's me speaking and not just relying on, you know, partners, affiliate partners or something like that to do it. So that's been a big one for me.
Yeah, that was big for me too. I this is probably the longest run up or startup of a podcast on the planet, I think. If you ask
Really?
if you ask my producer Heather, she'll be like, "Oh my God, we worked on it for over a year." Like it took me a long time to really kind of decide that. Well, that I think what it came down to was, can I provide the value that I really want to? Is it like, I see this vision. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be writing a book. That's not my motivation here. But I just was really like compelled to. I think there's a lot of noise out there, and I think that. And I mean, I talk about this at the beginning of the intro of the podcast, but entrepreneurialism has really kind of become this celebrity allure, right? Every celebrity's got a whiskey or a tequila or a gin or whatever, and God bless them. But for me, that has not been the experience. It's not the experience of most of the people I know in entrepreneurship, and it is a grind. And I really wanted to interview people who didn't have that platform, but really had a lot of value to provide. And that, if one person listens to a podcast and takes one piece away, whether it's, really the business strategies and all that kind of stuff, it's superficial. To me, it's more of the, if they walked away going, "Hey, I learned from Jeni about how to overcome my fears," or I learn from somebody else on, how to manage my time so that I can be home and give or be more present in my intimate relationship or with my kids or whatever that looks like. To me, that is the most important stuff, but it really took, I mean, we worked and I'll say delayed and delayed and delayed, or dragged my feet on launching this podcast, because it just was a bit of a battle for me to be able to get on a mic and have a conversation and put myself out on the internet. And, you don't like to, I guess you don't like to admit it, but it's a bit scary. Right. And I'm so tied to like adding like absolute value. So that to me is like the most important thing.
See, and
So
that's
it's
the
hard.
drive. That's the drive, though, is when you have that. This is why I say, too, that you need the passion for helping people, right? For helping your potential clients, is because that will drive you through that fear. It will drive you through that questioning of anything, because you'll know that, I know I can do some good here, so I'm going to do it, right? That's why I say you have to have the passion for them, not the passion for the topic.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the purpose or passion, whatever the word, people use or how they want to define it, is really, yes, to help and support and, provide a path or whatever value. I think, the podcast released today, actually, the one guy he talks about, he's in real estate, but he said like, he doesn't get his fulfillment from the business. He's passionate about it, or it provides purpose, but his fulfillment is from outside. My fulfillment comes from my relationship with my wife, with my kids, my friends. That's where my fulfillment is driven.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same. And now I've, my business is new, so I only have, well, I have over 100 students. I thought I was going to start with just like a dozen students or so, right? And see if I really wanted to do this and feel it out. And no, I opened the doors and I had 80 people sign up like that. But yeah, so in the last year, we've worked on starting over 100 businesses, and it's been, it's been a whirlwind. But it's the same thing as I live vicariously through them, right? Even when they get upset about something, or like, they're going through a struggle, I'll say, you know what, isn't this amazing? Isn't this amazing? Like this is such a you don't even realize the journey of starting your first business or starting just a new kind of business. It's actually such a cool thing. And you and I as entrepreneurs, we know that success and failure, they're together, right? You can't have one without the other.
Right.
But to watching my students learning those lessons too, it's beautiful. It's like it's so amazing. I'm so excited when I see them, have a bomb with a sale, a sales call, or with like, not quite like flipping out over, random things like somebody, commenting on one of their posts, something that they didn't like, and every lesson, they come away, I ask them, what did you learn from that? And how can you correct that? Like there's tiny little things, those little tiny nuances that they can hone their instincts, and watching them grow from that and come to a point where they actually are seeing that success. When I see somebody like, one of my students that made his 40 grand in the first month, he started out a little bumpy and he wasn't sure if he could even do it. And then to see that, I'm like,
wow.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So I'm living vicariously through all of them.
You have launched 100 businesses in the last year?
No, some of them are still going, but we've launched a lot. Yeah. Some of them are still in launch mode.
Some are still in launch mode.
Wow. Oh yeah, a lot, most of them.
And how many? Go ahead.
I was going to say that some of them we started out with a longer process, right, where it was going to be like a 6-month launch period. And what I realized watching everybody go through it, it gives them too much opportunity when it's stretched out like that. Because I go at everything slow mode, where I'm like, just take it easy, just chill, let things go. I'm not in a rush. What I realized though is with most of my students, it gives them too much time to talk themselves out of it, or to procrastinate to a point where they're stalling, they're not making the progress. So what I realized was I have to shorten it, condense it, and make it faster. So now I've been able to do it. The reason I've been working so much, and my hands hurting a little bit, but is because I just redid my program so that we're using AI for everything. And now there's no reason that you can't have it up in about 30 days, that you can't have the money coming in, all of this, everything in 30 days. It's very condensed now. So I'm bypassing their any challenges that they're having, like emotionally or mentally, all those blocks, right? I'm trying to go as fast as we can now just to get the initial launch up, and then we revise it after. But it's been interesting to see them in those stages where now that they're like already in it, they already have the product created, they already have all of this. It's like we create the product now. I just came up with a strategy this week. We've just been testing it this week, where now you can create your entire program in a day, maybe a few days, but you possibly do it in a day with AI. Like it involves like these multiple, very, page long prompts for AI. But the whole system is already done. So far it's working amazing. So I'm thrilled, but we've done all of it, wrapped up in that. And now when you're going through the first 30 days, you already have a product. So why stop, right? Whereas before it would take a few months to get that product going. And then, so we take our time.
There's no second guessing it. You just got to keep going forward.
Yeah. You're like, you've already got a product. You might as well sell it.
Yep. That's great. So how many of these students would have ever owned their own business before?
A lot of them have. Most of them have had online businesses, but they struggled. Or they're coming from being in the hamster wheel, right? Where they're working their tails off and, not reaching their goals. So we just kind of dial back and follow a very simple system. I really believe most entrepreneurs make it more difficult than it needs to be, right? They overthink things, they add steps, they make assumptions, where if they come back at it and, instead of doing that 22-step funnel, maybe it's only 3 steps and you only add something if it's needed, right? So instead of following XYZ guru who might have a brilliant 22-step funnel, but for me, that's a lot to manage. That's 22 steps you have to manage. So, and I don't have the luxury of doing that. So for me, I'm going to start out by validating as much as I possibly can. I'm going to start with just 4-step funnel. That's my own approach. And then if I see and I've already validated that it's needed, then I might add another step. I'm certainly not going to go, most of the time I'm not ever going to go past that. But but I really believe a lot of it's just so much overthinking and thinking, that belief of you have to work hard for money. It's a hard one to get rid of for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But once they do, it's a huge shift in your business, right? It's a huge shift for your business.
A huge shift in your psychology and your energy. And you are really Jeni, I didn't realize to the extent that you're doing this, you are really like helping people create their own dreams. I mean, it's amazing.
That
You
is my
should be
goal.
so proud of yourself. Like, it's phenomenal. I do have one last question, but was like, how do you, on the education side of things, how do you sift through the noise of all the kind of people that are out there trying to, and I mean, I don't see it often because I'm not on social media that often, but how do you, but it does seem all the time that there's somebody trying to sell something on the internet or on social media. How do you rise above that and, kind of
You know,
position yourself
I
differently?
don't believe in noise unless you sound like everybody else. If you don't sound like everybody else, if you go out of your way to really, really intimately know your potential clients, and I go through a process of developing an ideal client and then a dream client. So once you know them and you can really speak directly to them and you know every single pain point, you know all those, their struggles, and I don't even want to just say what keeps them up at night because it goes deeper than that. But once you know that, there's no reason for you to sound like anybody else. There's no reason for you to even feel like there's noise. It's like for me, there's how many internet marketers out there teaching now? It's endless. But I know that I know online entrepreneurs. I know their struggles because I've been there and I've talked to them now. Like I didn't just assume, that they'll want what I wanted back then. I went and talked to them first to see what do you guys need right now in this day and age. It's totally different, right, than when I first started in 1998. So I have spoken to them so much, and I think of all those people that said the word freedom to me, over 150 people. So don't you know that every bit of my business is based around freedom? Laptop lifestyle, it screams freedom.
It does.
Everything, yes. And so when I go at it, right, I could have just started a make money online business. That's not what I'm going to do because that'll just make me sound like everybody else. Instead, it's all about what they really truly want is freedom. And then I'll break that down into different aspects based on what I've learned from them, what I've heard from them. So in that sense, you don't have to worry if there's too much competition. In fact, you actually want competition. If there's competition and there's a ton of noise in your industry, you know that you want to be there because that's where the money is. That's a
Right.
proven, validated niche or industry, right? So you want to be there. You just want to stand out. You just want to do what you can to stand out.
Make sure you find out the need of the customer and how they value it, I guess, is kind of how I read that. Like when
You want the
because the need is like what some people, they define money as freedom, certainty, like safety. So you're really getting into that word freedom to me is a value. And it just, just like love or whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, you're doing a great job. Well, I lied. I have another question. Sorry. Where do you see the future? Like, if you were to predict, you've been through this journey for 25 plus years. What do you think is next?
I think everything is going to be AI based and that we have our culture is such a convenience culture too, that I think that those two things are going to be the biggest high. Um, Not just in what we want to do with our businesses, but I think, wow, like I'm so excited with AI. I've so embraced it and I've been teaching it on summits and things like that too. But I think the faster that we can learn that the more opportunity, the easier things will be. So I think that's where everybody's focus should be right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I wonder if sometimes, we'll start to, if AI will get to the point where, it will search us out, like whether it's for products and, advertising will be done in such a specific way. And, it's like, it was just funny today. Like last night I ordered some boxing gloves, some new boxing gloves for us for training, kind of wore through the ones we've got. And, the company that I bought them from has popped up like 3 or 4 times today on some of my Google searches and stuff like that. But at what point do we, get to the, where well, I know what's happening. You have a dinner with a bunch of people and you talk about certain topics or certain companies or certain products. And all of a sudden that stuff pops up. I mean, it's happening. I don't know how they do that, but it's, I mean, obviously it's happening. So I think that's just going to get crazier and crazier and crazier, which I'm excited about, truthfully. Like it's, you know, like I've been thinking I should buy a couple new shirts so I don't have to wear crappy old hoodies on the podcast. And I just never get around to doing it because I'm so busy and I haven't found an online shirt company that I like. But, you know, I would just be thinking it and all of a sudden it would just happen, right?
You'll probably end up making one, buying a company and making your own.
Well, that's where, yeah. Anyways, that's, I just think it's going to be, I mean, I'm with you in that camp. I think that technology is going to make things, I think we're going to have bumps in the road, just like anything. But it's going to make, it's going to really help people who need it in a lot of ways, in general. So, Jeni, I'm blown away at what you're doing. I don't think I fully knew, yeah, as a matter of fact, I know like my son's out living van life right now. And I was texting you about him the other day. He's not any longer in California near you. He's up in Arizona. Never know where he's going to be, but I know like I know Tennille had connected you with him to kind of do your course. But outside of him knowing he was taking your course, I didn't really know what the course was. After listening to what you're doing, I'm blown away. Like I mean, to give people that confidence, that certainty, the freedom, the whatever it is that they're searching for in their dreams, educating them. You know, you've clearly been uber successful in this arena. And not only have you haven't, success is not even the word to use. You're a pioneer. And you really led the way, not just for women, but for men and women in this industry. And I mean, you're a powerhouse, you're compassionate, you're loving, you're caring. I love you, Jeni. I think you're just one of my favorite people on the planet. I'm so happy to hear what you're doing and how you're helping people. And I will say, I'm really bad at asking this. If you want people to find you, how would they find you?
They can go to laptoplifestyle.co or they can find me on Facebook. We have a Facebook group that's linked from my own profile, which is just Jeni Hott. But I have a Facebook group on there. It's right now it's Laptop Lifestyle Society, but we're about to change it. But if you go in there, like that's where I teach a lot just for free, just giving out tips and advice. I answer questions. I just have a good time in there with anybody that's an aspiring laptop lifestyler.
Yeah, well, I will say this, like, if anybody who's looking for a personal reference for Jeni Hott, I'm prepared to give it and consider this given. And I don't do that. I don't do that lightly, for sure. I'm so grateful to have you here, to have this conversation. I hope it's not the last conversation. And, before we sign off on this, don't leave because off the air here, I know Tennille wants to come down to the studio and say hello to you. So, thank you so much for being here. This has been a delightful conversation with an incredible woman. You're an inspiration, for everyone, but you're certainly an inspiration for young women out there who are trying to figure out what to do and continue on helping people with their dreams.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for having me. This has been an honor.
It's an honor for me to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking all the time. I know you're busy. I appreciate you, kiddo.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.